All right, everyone. Another Buffalo Bills season has ended in disappointment. I guess we'll figure out what we make of this 2024 edition of the Buffalo Bills. Right here with Jay Skurski of the Buffalo News. He was out there at Arrowhead. I was at One Bills Drives alongside him as well for locker room cleanup day. Before we even think about Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans, Eagles, Chiefs, the matchup that all of America has been dying for, Jay. Of course, that seems to be the consensus. We've got to put a bow on this Bill season. I guess, all right, there's two ways to look at it. Big picture. Either you're in the camp of off-season expectations, post Stephon Diggs trade, we're low. I think the talking heads on daytime June television, which is really the worst time to consume NFL content for my money, was, this is a Bills team that isn't even going to win the division. So they get to the AFC Championship game. They throw everything they have at the back-to-back champs. They fall short. I've seen that narrative scripted like this is a good. I mean, a lot of the players said the same thing. This was a productive season. We're taking a lot of good from this. Grateful. We took it to the haters, all that stuff. I'm kind of in the other camp, Jay. I think that you've got a Hall of Fame talent in Josh Allen. He'll be in Canton one day. He is the best quarterback this side of Patrick Mahomes. And to go through another season when you could have won the Super Bowl, when you're knocking at the door, to use Josh's words, you got to kick the door down. And they were unable to do that again. To me, this is a massive disappointment. You don't know how many of these opportunities you're going to get. You don't know how long you're going to have a team fully capable of getting to the Super Bowl, winning the Super Bowl. The expectations, to me, they changed in September. It was pretty clear this is a team. As long as you've got Josh Allen, you're always going to contend for rings. And they figured out a formula. We'll get into the reasons, but again, you lose to the Kansas City Chiefs the fourth time in 5 years. Again, it's playoff disappointment for Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane, and the Buffalo Bills. Where do you lie on this all, Jay? When you wrap your head around this edition of the Buffalo Bills?
Well, I sort of have a foot in both camps, I guess, because I do think that as we get further removed and the pain of this loss dulls, we are going to look back at this as a successful season in the sense that I was among those that didn't expect them to. I don't know if you want to call it step back or transition year. It's not like they were completely rebuilding, but I didn't have as big of expectations. I thought this was a 10 or 11 win football team, not a 13 win football team going into the meaningless regular season finale with a chance at 14 wins. So they did outplay what I expected from them. And so in that regard, if they were better than I thought they were, if they went farther in the playoffs than they have been going, right, with divisional losses, then it was a successful season. And I do think that in a couple of weeks, a month or two, the NFL calendar turns quickly, right? The Super Bowl wraps up and we'll be in the combine in a few weeks, and then free agency will be starting, and then people will be focused on the draft. And this will pass. This feeling, this crushing disappointment in Buffalo, it will pass. And I think that when it does, or when it dulls, because it's not going to go away entirely until they beat the Chiefs, or unless they beat the Chiefs, but when it does dull, I think we'll look back and say they had a good year. And I think I can sit here and say right now that they had a good year. That doesn't erase the disappointment. That doesn't erase the opportunity that was in front of them on 4th and 1 at the Chiefs' 40-yard line with 9 minutes to go in the game. If Josh Allen gets that first down, I fully believe that they win that football game, or at least come really, really close if they don't, right? And so it was right there. It was a couple of plays here and there, which has so often been the case against the Chiefs. And so none of what I said at the start erases that disappointment. And to your point, but I can't consider the entire season a disappointment because of that. The challenge, as it has been, is unchanged. It's what has to change to defeat this team. How do they get beyond the Chiefs? And I don't have an easy answer for that right now. I'm sure that Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane are not getting a lot of sleep right now because they are wrestling with that question. But I do think they're going to have other opportunities. I think Josh Allen is the quarterback that can win this team a Super Bowl. I know the patience is being tested right now, but I think that while you can be disappointed with this outcome, I do think that eventually we are going to look back at this season and said they did a lot of good things.
Hey, and I don't want to be all gloom and doom. I mean, we both grew up here in Western New York. It is crazy that they're playing in these meaningful January games. I mean, I can think of a whole generation of Bills fans that were thrilled to be in the hunt graphic in December and maybe have a game where you've got a 14% chance to making the playoffs with 2 games to go, right? Like, I mean, even like the Steelers backups in 2005, right when you had to beat Willie Parker and James Harrison, they kept their offensive and defensive lines in, I think, for that game, but Drew Bledsoe and the Bills couldn't get it done. Like that was a big game for a full generation of Bills fans. So I don't want to begrudge like the state that they're in. This is a glory period for the franchise when you've got this quarterback and a coach who ended the drought, has now won 5 divisions in a row. Like you have a team that is going to contend year in and year out. So to me, the expectations kind of raised to a level of nothing matters until January. Like
Yep.
really, like I think everybody, including the Bills, just want to hit that simulate to AFC divisional round of the playoffs button because we're gonna, like you just said, we'll talk about this draft. We'll talk about free agents. The draft will happen. And by OTAs, everybody will be excited again. They'll have a new piece at wide receiver, probably. Maybe they even swing a deal for an impact defensive player. They're going to have money to spend now, right? Stephon Diggs is off the books. That was a really good move by Brandon Beane. Just eat it all right now, and then 2025 you can kind of go for it. They were thinking transition themselves, but none of it changes the fact that man, in the heat of battle, you've got a quarterback who we both think should have been MVP and a team that was full of belief. I mean, they really were. It was genuine. The unselfishness through this roster was unlike anything I've really seen. Back to covering the Packers, like there was a lot of entitlement on some of those Packer teams that were knocking at the door. There's no entitlement with this Bills team. I mean, we always say football's a human game, and you need those bonds to be strong. I mean, these guys love each other. That it means something in those fourth quarters, and to come up short again, and for I guess what I'm, in a roundabout way, what I'm getting to is it's the same shit to put it kindly for this team. Like, was Josh Allen perfect? No. Like second straight year, he had the ball, a couple minutes left, chance to win the game, and they didn't win it. But also, I mean, you look at the last 4 elimination games. Am I looking at? No, I'm sorry. Last 5, 4 Mahomes games, 1 Burrow game. You've got 40 non-kneel down drives for this defense. They've allowed 22 touchdowns, 9 field goals, only forced 8 punts. You've got a missed field goal in there, 2 turnovers. One of them, Patrick Mahomes just drops the ball. That's how you got your stop in the first half. And you've allowed 166 points. That's good for 4.15 points per non-kneel down drive. This is all my story at golongtd.com. And also, yeah, the Chiefs, they scored 32 points. That's the most points that they've scored in 36 games, dating all the way back to September 24th, 2023 against the Chicago Bears. I don't think it's too much to ask for a defensive coach to have a okay to good defensive game at this point of the season. And they're all calamities for Sean McDermott.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, a lot of this falls directly in the defense's lap. That's what I wrote about after the game. I'm not excusing the offense. I'm not excusing Joe Brady. There were times where, listen, they were on to the tush push, right? They were on to that play, and they kept going back to it, and they kept going back to it after we find out yesterday that Josh Allen hurt his hand and hurt his wrist on one of those plays. And so, why do you keep going back to it? Why is there not a different plan, a better plan there? Why are you throwing bubble screens on 3rd and 10? And yeah, I know that it might have been, schematically it looked like it might have worked. Well, it didn't work, because it's, you're depending on guys to make plays, and they didn't make them. And so I have a lot of issue with Joe Brady's game, the last 2 games, honestly. I thought, even against the Baltimore game, I thought they There were some problems there, I think, offensively for this team. But to your point, Tyler, 32 points for the Chiefs. I didn't even realize it went back that far. I just knew they hadn't touched 30 this season. You've got to do better defensively, and they're losing games in the playoffs because of their defense, and that is now 5 straight years. The only exception in there is the Burrow game, where nobody played well on that team. The offense didn't play well, the defense didn't play well. They were an emotionally taxed unit. Obviously, that was a couple of weeks after what happened to DeMar Hamlin. You almost want to just throw that game out and the end of that season out just because of the extraordinary circumstances surrounding it. So then you're talking about the 4 losses to Mahomes. And listen, there's no crime in struggling against Patrick Mahomes. The rest of the league does it. But to your point, that's the measuring stick now for this franchise. Nothing else. This franchise next year is measured on, can you get to the Super Bowl? And if you can you, or if you cannot, can you at least get Patrick Mahomes, whether that's in the divisional round or what? That's all that's left for this team. Those are the only 2 mountains left to climb, right? Beat Mahomes in the playoffs, get to the Super Bowl. And they're going to need better effort defensively to do it. And they haven't gotten it 5 years in a row. And when you're a defensive-minded head coach, that is problematic. By and large, Josh Allen has done enough to give this team an opportunity to win, and that includes Sunday night when he wasn't perfect. But with the game on the line on 4th and 5, he launches a desperation pass that hits Dalton Kincaid in the hands. And this is something I'm going to be working on, writing about in the coming weeks ahead. But you look at Brandon Beane's last 3 number 1 picks. That's Kaiir Elam, can't get on the field and is a liability when he does. Dalton Kincaid, who I understand, okay, he's been playing hurt. He played hurt this season. That's commendable. But if he was that hurt, maybe he shouldn't have been out there. And Keon Coleman, who was thoroughly outplayed by Xavier Worthy. And those 2 are going to be compared for the rest of their careers because of the circumstances involved and how Worthy ends up with the Chiefs. Those are all bad looks for Brandon Beane. And you got a bad look for Sean McDermott in that your defense allows the most points to the Chiefs all season. And you got a bad look for Brandon Beane in that the guys that are supposed to be difference makers, right? We're talking 2 trade ups in the first round and 1 first pick of the second round after a trade down in Coleman. Those are all supposed to be difference makers. None of them were difference makers, and I would argue were the reasons that they lost as opposed to the reasons that they won.
And look at the players kind of drafted in those 3 groupings too. I mean, in the Kaiir Elam draft, I sat down with the West Coast scout for the Chiefs at the Combine last season. He was on Trent McDuffie, and a lot of people were like, he was a highly regarded prospect, but he loved Trent McDuffie, sold Trent McDuffie to Brett Veach, convinced them to make the move up. They get one of, if not like the best slot DB in the NFL. All right. And in the same draft that you as the Buffalo Bills get Kaiir Elam. Kaiir Elam and Trent McDuffie are on 2 different planets. The Dalton Kincaid draft, you're right. Torn PCL in one knee, the other knee's full of fluid. Dawson Knox filled us in locker room cleanup day. It's commendable he was out there. It absolutely affected him on that final play. I mean, a little bit more burst, and maybe he makes that catch. But you're right, Jay. Like, if you're that hurt, are you hurting the team by even being out there? Was he on the injury report? Did any of that happen? I don't know. Maybe he was at some point. Either way,
he was with a knee injury, but either way,
yeah,
right?
Either way. That same draft, I'm thinking back at the top of my head, you've got Tucker Kraft went to Green Bay later. Sam Laporta went to Detroit. There were some other tight ends in that same draft. And then obviously Keon Coleman, this draft, we talked about it for months. I mean, do they make a bold move up for Brian Thomas? Look at the season that he had for Jacksonville. Every bit as good as Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, he was a stud working out there with Chad Hall and a bad Jaguars team. So his development, that's a player that you could have maybe made a move for, or you just stay where you're at and you take Ladd McConkey, who was better than everybody in that grouping, or Xavier Worthy. I get it, hindsight 2020, and hell, I was commending Brandon Beane at the time for not being afraid of the Chiefs. Get your guy. Xavier Worthy had over 100 total yards. Keon Coleman had 1 catch for 12 yards. Is Keon Coleman that much different than a Mac Hollins, who a guy like that, you get just a little bit above the minimum? You got to get more out of these drafts, Jay. That's a great point.
Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, Brian Thomas, everyone was saying he falls out of the top 20, go get him. Why not? And so I don't understand it. And it's so, Brandon Beane's got to answer to those questions. And we'll spin it forward. That's why I'm on board with Brandon Beane trading his first round pick. You're not hitting on him, so trade it for a guy that is established in this league that can push you over the edge. Because at this point, they don't necessarily need to. They reset the salary cap last year, to a good degree. They're still not in a great spot, but to a good degree by eating that Diggs money. So you can get a little creative this offseason. Go for it. You're right there. You've got young guys who have some experience now with this playoff run. You've got Allen in the prime of his career. I don't need to, get a guy on a cost controlled contract right now for 4 years, especially if it's going to be another Dalton Kincaid or Keon Coleman. I don't want that on this roster. I want an established stud that's going to help. And so that's why I'm all in favor. If Beane wants to trade his first round pick, have at it, right? Because he's done it before, and the Stephon Diggs trade worked out. Stephon Diggs was excellent for them for 4 years. So to me, I'm almost in the camp right now, and obviously we'll get there, as the offseason goes on. I'm almost in the camp where it's a disappointment if he ends up using that first round pick.
I mean, why not go full Les Snead, Sean McVay, LA Rams? Why not trade multiple first round picks? Hell, I
Yeah,
don't know. Is Myles Garrett, is he somebody that could become available? I mean, I
Max
hate it when we
Crosby.
turn the page so quickly on a season, but
I
you're right.
know.
I mean, that's probably the next move. It's doing something bold. Now if you've got some financial flexibility. Last thing, I know you've got to get back to molding minds there in the classroom, Jay.
No,
Um,
we're good.
two plays that I was chatting about with those Osiris Torrance and Greg Rousseau, and I think you talked to Rousseau as well. Uh, I mean, just to bring it back to the coaching, and this is probably even deeper than Sean McDermott. I mean, Bobby Babbage, Joe Brady did a phenomenal job this year. I think exceeded expectations, but pretty damning when Greg Rousseau's talking about plays that the Chiefs had never run before. Yeah, they saw that diamond formation, but they had never seen it where they're pulling a tackle to the left and Mahomes is keeping it to the right. Go back and watch that play, everyone. I mean,
Yeah.
Smoot is just, it's like JV football stuff. He's running the opposite direction. Matt Milano, your best player's flat footed. They weren't prepared at all at a huge point of the game. That ended up being the touchdown of the game. And then Osiris Torrance is breaking down. Yeah, Spags just set him up. I mean, they did not expect them to bring the pressure where they were showing pressure on that side. That's why they slid the protection left. They saved it all game. Maybe Josh Allen needs to kind of work that protection pre-snap. I don't know who that's on. It feels like the whole coaching staff was just taken to the woodshed by the Chiefs. I mean, is that a problem?
Well, I mean, it's a problem, but I mean, we can't again act like we're completely surprised here, right? I mean, we're
Yeah.
talking Andy Reid, maybe the greatest creative play caller in the NFL, with a guy who's going to be looked at as maybe the greatest quarterback of all time as he continues this run in Patrick Mahomes. So let's give the Chiefs plenty of credit here too. Those things are going to happen, I think, at times in a game. In terms of Allen and Brady, though, I think there's a lot of growth there, and you want to spin that to. I think this was a good decision by Joe Brady. I don't think he's ready to be a head coach, honestly. I think there were a lot of lessons for him to learn coming out of this loss because, let's be honest, he got outcoached. And that's going to Spagnuolo's maybe the best defensive coordinator in the league, right? And so, to your point, though, Babbage and Brady, you should have known that there were going to be some of these issues here where these possibilities of growing pains. They're both young guys. I think Babbage is 42, 43. Brady's still 35 years old. And so they're going to grow on the job. And I'm not going to criticize Sean McDermott for giving those guys those opportunities. I think that was the right move. But when
Definitely.
you go up against the best play caller in NFL history and Andy Reid and a defensive coordinator who's known for his creativity and who has shown in the past that he can come up with some answers to the test for Josh Allen, they're going to get theirs too. And so I think that happened in this game. But despite that, Ty, they were there. They had the
Yeah.
opportunity. I mean, they're right there with the Chiefs every single year. It's just, when are they going to have the dude that makes the play that they didn't make this year, right? When are they going to have that push to pick up the 4th and 1? How do they get over that finish line? Because it is not like they're far away. So is it going to be the coaching that draws up the right play on 4th and 1, who sees that the tush push isn't working, we're going to switch to something else? Or is it just going to be, I'm going to block it so well that we're going to get it, right? So it's coaching, yes. It's execution, it's both, and they've got to just find that final piece of the puzzle to get them past it because they're right there. But we can keep saying that until they actually do it. It's going to feel like it's miles away.
And everyone eats. All the balance is great. 30 rushing touchdowns, 30 passing. You still want the stud receiver. So Josh Allen can shift into FU mode, spread them out, and go to town, go downfield. Even that Ravens game, I got a little conservative in that second half. So I feel like, yeah, they told us all about this unselfishness and everyone eats and Mac Hollins and spreading it all out. That's fine and dandy. Brandon Beane, Joe Brady, everybody should still want a legit weapon at receiver to maybe take this offense to another gear. Because if you've got a player like Josh, you don't want to hold him back, man. Like you don't want him handing the ball off, dinking and dunking. Like you want to spread it out and go into attack mode still.
Absolutely. They got to go get that dude. That's the challenge.
Jay, you're the man. Thank you so much. Everybody read his stuff at the Buffalo News. And let's do it again. I'm sure I'll see you out there one Bills Drive when Bean and McDermott greet us and try to make sense of this.
We'll be out there this week. We'll be bopping around together in New Orleans. We'll be at the Combine. We're gonna get a lot of tie-down time, so we'll do it again soon.
You got it, man. Thanks so much, Jay.
All right, buddy. We'll talk to you.